Hi, I'm Woody and welcome to Woody Minis. Today I'm going to be fixing what is allegedly the worst Adeptus Custodes model. Now this is the Adeptus Shield Captain with Melter Spear, and he was absolutely pilloried on Reddit for being a bit too short, but we don't care about that here at Woody Minis because we are just going to be kitbashing him with this Branchwych from the Sylvaneth Age of Sigmar starter set. I began by cutting out all of the pieces as you do, cleaning up all the mold lines and then assembling him entirely with blue tack. This is going to let me pick and choose which pieces to remove and kitbash easily, testing them out before I find a look that kind of leads me in the direction I want to go in. I took the torso piece from a Sylvaneth Tree Lord and stuck it onto his arm to see if it would fit as a shield, and it does. I then went back into the Branchwych box to pick out his head. I wanted to make sure that the expression was, accurate. I wanted him to look a bit spooky and see what I need to do further down the line. I also found these tree-shaped tassels which were attached to, they were attached to a naked tree lady torso, and as much as I do love the current femstodes in lore, Gwendolyn Christie, anyone, that wasn't the direction I wanted to go in with this build. With my direction set, I assembled the model up to the part where I'd start kitbashing using Tamiya Extra Thin. I could then start working on the weapon. I cut away these rope tassels because they don't really fit in with my army theme. Maybe I can add some vines later or some bits of detritus there. I also trimmed off the spike and shaved down to make a nice smooth surface so that I could replace the blade of his melter spear. I lined up my sprue clippers and clipped off the tip, and then took out the Branchwych staff. I cut it off just about here and smoothed down the surface so that they'd make a nice bond with the Tamiya Extra Thin. I lined up both of my pieces with a little bit of glue and just held them in place until the bond started to form. It was a bit wobbly, so I left it to cure while I worked on the rest of the model. The Tree Lord torso had a nice surface on the back, so it was just a simple stick and hold job. The tabard required a bit of trimming and cutting, but it stuck on nicely onto his lower groin area. By this point, the weapon was fully secure, so I stuck it on. Now, whilst I was rooting around in the Branchwych box, I found these antlers which were pretty cool, and I could use them to replace the plume from the shield captain. I stuck them onto the back of his power pack exhausts with 2 dots of glue and held it in place. There were a few gaps from where I'd stuck things on, so I filled them in with some extra thin, just to fuse the 2 pieces together. Now the face would be a tricky part. It was too long for me in the blue tack testing phase, so I would need to trim away a lot of this shield captain's faceplate. And I don't really care about doing a nice neat job here because it will need some green stuff to blend it on later, no matter how I cut it. I glued the 2 pieces together and he's now looking suitably spooky. Also in the Branchwych kit was this guttering slug of some kind, and well, what do you know, on his base there is a guttering slug-sized hole, a perfect little companion for the Woodstodes shield captain. Oh yeah, don't forget to drill your barrels. I stuck some green stuff onto the back of the torso, or now the shield, as this part wouldn't normally be shown on the Tree Lord, so it was just smooth boring plastic. The antlers also needed to be blended onto the armor of the Custodes shield captain, and I did this with just some soft tip sculpting tools. I double checked the pose of a head with blue tack before ripping it off, and then, cleaning up the rest of the blue tack. The trickiest part of the green stuff job was to use this metal tip sculpting tool coated in Vaseline to add some more leaves to his tabard. I did this by holding the edge of the blade close to and parallel to the torso and just pushing and pulling it to score some lines. The rest of it was relatively simple. All I needed to do was use a soft tip sculpting tool to blend on the head. I was then confident enough to glue it on. The kitbash was now done, so it's time for painting. I attached it to my finest wooden painting spraying handle and took him away outside. I sprayed him black first. After that, I removed him again, took him outside, and sprayed him white with a Xenophor highlight, just straight from a rattle can. Now time for some real painting, and anything is a painting handle if you're brave enough. I'm starting out with striking Scorpion Contrast Green on a dirty old brush. Doesn't really matter, as this is going to go all over the model, apart from on the antlers and the shield. And the base too, but does that really count? The Xenophor highlight does make this work a bit better, but I do need to add some more colour into the recesses, and for that I'm using Bieltang Green Shade. Again, I'm putting it everywhere and just making sure it really gets into the darker areas. Doesn't really take too long, and before you know it, he's looking suitably green. But he could be better with Agrak's Earthshade, which will really help the green pop by going into all these recesses and making it a lot darker, giving it some more contrast. I didn't do a perfect job, so it was time to fix my mistakes and spills with some white scar onto all the areas that I would be painting different colours. I could also use the white scar, watered down a little bit, into all these recesses to make a nice glowing effect. Don't worry, I will be going over these spotchy bits later. And if you can't tell, I love contrast paint, so I'm also using the Citadel Wildwood to cover up all the wooden bits on this model, which is pretty much just the shield, so oh wait, no, there's a little bit over here too. I used Citadel Skull to do the antlers as well, but I may have forgotten to record that part, and some of the other parts as well. But I did remember to show you painting these green leaves. Green. But he could be greener with some green stuff, fluorescent green for his weapons and glowy bits. I put on a little layer mixing it with white and just dry brushed it onto the weapon to give it a bit of an ethereal glow. I watered down the mixture a little bit to apply it into these runes and grooves on the shield. A little bit splotchy, but nothing a finger can't fix. And what's this, a new colour that's hardly used, of course? Well, after a good 5 or so minute shake, I was ready to start adding some yellow to help some details pop on this model. I applied it to his eyes out of focus as is tradition, and then applied it to some other bits. Now, I wasn't quite happy with these antlers and they did need a bit of a fix, so I added some dark wildwood to create some, little striations, and then I bumped up the highlights with some white on the top. There were some other details, of course, like these gems. I base coat my gems black, and I want them to contrast them with the armor, so they're going to be red. I had a small red crescent to the underside of the gems away from the light source, then, as is tradition, out of focus yellow. Once I finish the blurry yellow, I add a little dot to the top, and then I call it a day. Now, he's going to lead my Woodstodes Wardens like this guy, and they have a mossy green cape made of reticulated tree powder, this stuff. It's basically just sponge that has been dyed green. It's really soft, pliable, and breakable, easy to rip with your fingers. There are several ways to stick this onto your miniature, but my way is just using super glue. I apply it over the area I want, in this case the cloak, take some of the reticulated tree powder and just push it on. It dries pretty much instantly, but it's really bulky, so then I just remove the excess by pulling it away and stick that excess onto another bit until it's all done. Repeating this process is a bit time consuming, so I'm not going to bore you with it. Here it is in high speed. If there's too much and it's covering some points on the model I'd want you to see, I'll just go in with these tweezers and remove it. And the final part of the actual model itself are these tabards. They're a bit, not woody enough, so I'm going to be sticking on these model tree leaves. Just using PVA this time because they do require a lot of moving around and superglue tends to dry far too quickly. I take my tweezers, dip it in, and then carefully place them on, starting at the bottom, layering it up like scales. I do this because if you just pour it on, it looks incredibly messy, and I want it to look like a leafy chainmail cloak. This took a fair while, and after I did it, I forgot to turn my camera back on before I did the base, which means it's time for a very early grand reveal. If you've liked this video, I would love it if you could subscribe, as I'm a pretty new YouTuber and every subscribe is a nice vote of confidence that I should probably keep doing it. So yeah, like and subscribe. Thanks.